And again, I'm from the National Housing Law Project, and just really honored to be with everyone here today, and want to thank Mass Union so much for setting up the interpreters and making the space available for us to talk about the mixed status rule. So as Dave mentioned today, we're going to spend our time talking about a proposal that HUD introduced earlier or last month in February. And we call it the mixed status families rule. So we're going to go over three things today. First, we're going to go over we're going to go over mixed status families in HUD housing. We're going to talk a little bit about who they are and about what the current rights are. And we want to start there because it's really important for families to know that the law hasn't changed yet, and that that they still have the right to stay. Because we know right now there's been a lot of fear amongst immigrant families living in HUD housing, and some people worry that they have to move out. And we want to make sure to stress that people do not have to move out of housing, even though HUD has introduced this proposal. The second thing we'll do is we'll go over the proposed rule and the changes that it would like to make. And then we'll talk about how HUD residents and how you all can get involved to fight back, because we're in a really critical time right now where the public has a chance to tell the government why they don't why they don't like this rule. And I think the voices of HUD residents are extremely important to this conversation. So I think so with that, I'll go to the first slide. So some of this is a lot of information, so don't worry about capturing everything. Like Dave mentioned, slides will be available, but and I'll try to sort of talk about the main important pieces. Because you're a union of public housing tenants, it's really the most important part is that this rule would apply to public housing tenants, but also it would apply to some other programs. So it would apply to the voucher program. It would also apply to some to people who live in Section 8 project-based rental assistance properties. And then some other programs that are not as widely known. But I wanted to make sure to have folks understand that in case you have friends or neighbors or community members who might have vouchers, for example, who would be interested in learning more about this rule. So the very first question that I just want to kind of go over is who can live in or who can receive HUD housing assistance. So in the public housing program, that means who is receiving a subsidy to live in the unit. And the main categories of people who can receive the assistance are US citizens and nationals, and non-citizens with eligible immigration status. So the government has been trying to say that being ineligible for HUD housing is the same thing as being undocumented. But we know that it's more, it's not one and the same. Being ineligible really means that you don't fall within this category, the small circle of statuses where HUD allows you to live in housing. And some of the examples of the eligible statuses are legal permanent residents, so green card holders, people who have been granted asylum, people who are refugees, people who have been granted withholding of removal. And there's a few other examples here that are on the slide. Those are this smaller circle is the immigration statuses where you can live in HUD housing. But there's a lot more immigration statuses that are legal, but you just aren't necessarily, you cannot receive the subsidy. And some major examples of that are people who have U visas. So those are visas that people receive when they have been a victim of a serious crime. Another example is DACA recipients. And another example are TPS holders. So again, these are legal statuses, but for reasons under the law, they can't necessarily receive the subsidy to pay for living in public housing. Um, so that's who can receive the subsidy. So who can receive the subsidy is different than the question of who can live in HUD housing. And who can live in HUD housing is mixed status families. So what is mixed status families? So mixed status families are families where at least one person is either a U.S. citizen or it's one of the or they have an eligible immigration status. So basically, it's somebody that falls under this category in this slide. So you have to have at least one person in the household that is eligible. Other family members uh, are not eligible, and they have the right to what we call claim not to contend eligibility. This is a very not very intuitive term, but the way we like to explain it is that they have the right to say that they are not that they're eligible and not that they're ineligible, but this third option where they say they don't claim that they're eligible. And it's really important to understand that because what that means is that the law gives them the right not to share their immigration status. So you don't have somebody who does not contend eligibility does not need to give their immigration status to your public housing authority or to HUD. And these family members also don't receive housing assistance. So they can live with their family member, but they don't receive any subsidy from HUD. So I want to emphasize here that people who don't contend eligibility do not need to give their status over to the Public Housing Authority. And the reason why I want to emphasize that is because there has been some confusion from HUD, so the agency that oversees the public housing programs, and also from some housing authorities of whether they need to get immigration status from everyone in the household. And so we have been trying to make sure to educate people that if you do not contend eligibility, if you're in a mixed status family and don't contend eligibility, you do not need to share your immigration status. This is really important right now, given how aggressive the administration's immigration enforcement operations have been this year. So in a mixed status family, you have eligible family members, and then you have family members who don't contend eligibility. Together, they create the family. This family receives rental assistance from HUD, but the rental assistance is prorated. So it only covers the eligible family members. And that means that the family pays the rest of the rent themselves. So just to give an example, if you have a family of 4 and one of the family members, 3 of the family members are citizens and one of them doesn't contend eligibility, then that family member or that family would receive 75% of the rent that they would normally get if everybody was eligible. And then the family also has to pay extra rent to cover the 4th person that's on the lease. And this is another important point because essentially what this means is that mixed status families pay more to live in HUD housing. And because they pay more, public housing authorities are able to serve more families. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the families receive a smaller subsidy. So that means there's more HUD assistance to go around to everyone. The other is that the rent, the increased rent that they get, the housing authorities can use that to help with like maintenance costs, other expenses around the properties. So at the end of the day, mixed status families pay more. And this is really this is really something that the administration has spread a lot of lies around because they have tried to say that, that immigrants are taking housing away from people and that if they publish this rule, that it'll make more housing for everyone. But the reality is it does not. And part of the reason is because mixed status families do pay more for the housing that they receive. So just to give you a very broad overview, there are about 20,000 families across the country right now who are mixed status families. That's around 80,000 people and almost 37,000 children. And most of those children are US citizens. And this has a very specific impact on Latino and Hispanic families. So, so that's an overview of the rule. I mean, of the way the law is right now. So the law right now, again, is that mixed status families have the right to stay in housing, in public housing. They do not have to give the immigration status of anyone who is not contending eligibility, and they receive a smaller subsidy and pay more in rent. So what HUD is proposing to change the rules so that mixed status families can no longer live in HUD housing. And the way they would do that is that they would require everyone in the household to either be a US citizen, a US national, or a non-citizen with eligible immigration status. So they're doing this even though there's a federal statute, a law that says that mixed status families have the right to live together. So this is pretty bold of HUD to try to try to propose this. And also they're trying to propose it again. So this rule was initially proposed during the first Trump administration. It got over 30,000 comments to oppose the rule, and everyone opposed the rule. It was residents, it was housing, like public housing authorities, it was local government officials. Everyone said it was a bad idea. And yet here we are, like 7 years later, and they're trying to propose the same thing again. And what they are going to do with this rule is they're going to make everyone be eligible. They are not going to give family members the right to contend eligibility anymore. And these families also wouldn't receive the prorated rental assistance. So the impact of this rule is that families would have to choose either to separate, to ask the ineligible family member to move out, or they would have to leave and be subject to eviction and possibly homelessness. So this is a very cruel rule right now, that they're a very cruel proposal, and they understand what they understand what they're doing. And one of the things that they are also trying to do is they're trying to scare people into self-evicting. To make it to make them so fearful that they would leave. And so that's another reason why we're trying to really get the message out that the law has not changed yet. The other part of the rule, this is a lot of text, so don't worry about the text here. I just listened to kind of what I'm saying. The other part of the rule here is that they want to require all residents to verify their citizenship. And right now, if you're a citizen living in public housing, probably all you had to do was you had to sign a piece of paper that you signed under penalty of perjury that said you were a citizen. Sometimes public housing authorities might require you to give like a birth certificate or a passport. but not all of them do. That's the main way that people have to verify their citizenship. What HUD is trying to propose now is to take a system that's at the Department of Homeland Security and run everyone's information through that system. And this is very alarming for us because this is a system that is not designed to verify people's citizenship. It's a system that has been used for decades to look at somebody's immigration status, and it has access to immigration documents. And immigration documents are very different than citizenship documents. And so the administration in 2025 decided to overhaul the system so that it would try to meet this new purpose of verifying citizenship status. And you may have heard of it. You may have heard of it in the news because right now they have been trying to get states to run their voter rolls through this system. And the system has been kicking out people who are clearly citizens because they have problems because the records are inaccurate, and there's issues with the way the system is. So HUD is trying to propose this very new way of verifying citizenship for all HUD residents. They would make everyone go through it, even though everyone has already verified their citizenship status. And so this is something that's new. It wasn't proposed in 2019, and is really concerning because I think it really puts people's housing at potential risk. There's a possibility that the system comes back and it doesn't have your information, and of course you can bring in your documents and you can try to fix it, but if you're in housing right now, you shouldn't really have to go through that. Like, you've gone through all the procedures already, the eligibility procedures to show that you are eligible. And so we just are concerned about the risk to residents, that to existing residents. We're also really concerned that it's going over to the Department of Homeland Security because we don't think that HUD has any business sending people's information over to that department, especially given what we've seen around immigration enforcement over the last year. The last change that the rule makes is that right now non-citizens um, over the age of 62 do not have to provide their information. They can provide proof of their age, but they don't necessarily have to provide proof of their immigration status. And that would change it to make for those folks submit information. And we know that sometimes there are barriers to getting that information for older adults as well, which is what we're concerned about. So the main aspects of the rule is, one, it would ban mixed status families from living in public housing and other HUD housing. And number two, it would require this very new and flawed and untested system for verifying citizenship. So what are the impacts, like the real world impacts of this? So number one, mixed status families will either have to separate or be evicted. And that's very concerning in the environment, the housing market that we're in, and also the fact that immigration enforcement has been so aggressive this year. Number two, there will be less HUD housing for everyone. HUD had to do some calculations when it proposed this rule, and in some of the papers, it shows that they will not have as much money to provide as much housing for everyone, and that in the end, there will be less housing assistance available for people, which is the opposite of what they should be doing as a housing agency. And then the last really big impact is that the housing of citizens and eligible immigrants will be at risk because of the verification requirement. So this is where comments, and especially comments from HUD residents, comes in. There is an opportunity from now through mid-April for people, everyday people, to write down what they think of a proposal. And I um I believe that the perspectives of HUD residents is extremely important here. And it some places, they write these very long and big comments, but even something as simple as like writing down like a paragraph or two, or even like 5 sentences about how you oppose this, especially as somebody who lives in HUD housing, is really powerful, and is something that we're hoping that you all can help us out with today. And it doesn't have to be that detailed. I think one of the things that I kind of tried to put down here are some of the ways that you can show that you can say that you don't support this. So for example, the idea that mixed status families are going to be separated, people can talk about how important it is to protect families, how important it is to protect neighbors, and how important it is to protect communities. And I did a presentation for a group in Los Angeles like a few months ago. And one of the family members who were at risk of eviction was sharing with us what she does for the community, how she's involved with the PTA, how she is very involved in her children's schooling, and all the things she does to volunteer in the community. And to me, that is an extreme loss to lose somebody like that, a leader like that in the community. So I think from the residents' point of view, being able to talk about the loss that you might have if you're a mixed status family is really important. And also from residents' point of view, the losses that you would feel, that you would experience of having people leave the community, and especially so many people at the same time because of a rule that HUD put together, is really important. It's also important, I think, to, potentially talk about the importance of keeping families together, and, where our values lay as a society. The second point here is around, we need more housing and not less housing. Everyone knows we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and being able to really tell that story, and even say wherever you're living in Massachusetts, how hard it is to find affordable housing, can really give a lot of details that's really helpful, I think, for the entire effort. And then the last point, I think, is really, we don't want, we really don't want, we want our public housing authorities, we want HUD, we want all these housing providers to focus on housing. We do not want them to focus on immigration enforcement. That is not their job. And the housing providers think this also. And yet this administration keeps trying to get all of these parts of the everyday life to be about immigration enforcement. And we want all the resources to go towards providing affordable housing for everyone. So being again able to talk about that from your perspective is extremely important. There are other ways to get involved as well. I mean, number one, first and foremost, we really want to make sure as many people submit comments as possible. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to work with others to do that, that would be great. If you want to do extra, awesome. I think extra could be working with other HUD residents to try to get them to submit comments. It could also be asking your local public housing authority or owner if they would be interested. We know a lot of housing authorities actually do want to actually oppose this rule, and being able to sort of nudge them a little bit could help a lot. There's also your local and state government may also want to weigh in, and being able to hear from their constituents could be very powerful. Again, in LA, they were able to get the city of Los Angeles to submit or to get a resolution opposing the rule. Um, and then just telling people that, because again, we're really focused on you as the residents, but we also know that you all are leaders in your communities and can also bring in other relationships as well. Again, this is just saying that the law hasn't changed. And then we do have resources that we want to make available. The last thing I just want to note before I hand things over is that we are working with the Protecting Immigrant Families campaign and have launched a campaign called Keep Families Together. We can make this available. I can put it in the chat shortly, but this is a website that we have. It is in English and also Spanish for the Spanish speakers. And it has a lot of different resources about the rural and it is geared a little bit more towards a layperson audience. And then the thing at the bottom I did want to show you is just there is a place where you can try to send your comments into HUD and we walk you through that. So you can play around with that, but just wanted to make sure you know that in case you want to take a look at it or you want to share it with other people that you work with. Okay, so with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I think I'm turning it over to Annette.
Marie Claire,
Yeah.
thank you. That was superb. It's really been amazing working with. So my name is Annette Duke. I work at the Mass Law Reform Institute. I've worked with Mass Union for a long time, and it's been great to always partner with Dave and Sarah and the whole board and staff. But Marie Claire and Eric Dunn, her partner at the National Housing Law Project, I've said this before to them, they're like the cavalry. They're coming in and they're really helping us so much, get ready for this public comment campaign and whatever we need to do beyond that. I did want to highlight a couple of things though. So I wanted to clarify, and this came up in the comments, that this proposed rule, it's proposed right now, only applies to HUD federal tenants. It does not apply to state public housing or rental assistance in Massachusetts. So it doesn't apply. In state public housing and state rental housing, immigration status does not matter. In fact, more people have been transferring into state public housing for that reason. The other thing is this rule, and Marie Claire said this, but I want to emphasize this. This proposed rule will apply to everyone in HUD housing because the housing authorities will have to check citizenship and immigration status. And that is going to cost a lot of money for housing authorities to do, thus draining the housing authorities from being able to put that towards maintenance and other services. And Marie Claire spoke about that too. But it impacts the entire community. I know Mass Union's board and the policy committee that it has started feels very strongly about this. This was a #1 priority at your convention. And I think it was Judy from Belchertown at one of the policy meetings said, when something bad happens in our communities, it happens to all of us. And we really need to stand with each other. And so I appreciated those words that Judy said. The other thing Marie Claire said that I think is really important is your words are very powerful. You have experience in your community about how this is going to impact people, how it's going to hurt your community, potentially divide your community, impact your neighbors. And so her advice to you is really important. Say it in your own words, how this proposed rule is going to hurt your community and hurt people in your community. And I saw one of the comments talk about kids. A lot of kids are going to be impacted. Their education is going to be impacted. They're going to be homeless. This is a very horrible thing that's beginning to happen. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is that as you go through this comment process and beyond, because you are in your communities, you also need to protect the identities of people who may be targeted by ICE in your community. So never, never use identifying information about someone who may be a mixed status household. We don't want to put these families in danger. So just be very careful about doing that or not doing that in your comments at all. To use their words, to use their experiences is important, but never use identifiers. Because as Marie Claire said, HUD and the government is acting very aggressively right now. And we need to be very careful. The other thing is, and Marie-Claire talked a little bit about this, it's a lot of information, first of all, to absorb. You don't have to absorb it all. Marie-Claire is going to send out those PowerPoints, but people in the community who are getting verification forms, different forms for different reasons, asking about their immigration status. If questions come up because it is confusing and different things are happening, it's not only this rule, reach out to Mass Union so Mass Union can reach out to us and we can help that family figure out how to deal with that request to verify their status. So definitely a lot is going on in the community and we want to protect people. The work that you're doing is also going to be really important, not just for this rule, but for other rules that are coming down the pike. And really, as you organize in your community, you're getting stronger. So if bad things happen, you can address them at the local level too. So everything you are doing to organize, to have these conversations with your local boards, to reach out beyond the residents in your community to human rights commissions and others in your community. It's all really important, the work that you're doing, not just for this, but for the future of public housing. So that's what I have to say, and it's just really great to be in a space with residents and legal services and other supporters. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Dave.
Yep. Thank you, Annette. Thanks for all your help. Next will be Zafiro Patiño, organizer here at Mass Union.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, everybody. My name is Zafiro Patiño, and I am the director of organizing for Mass Union. So from like a couple, 6 months ago, I'm sorry. So it's a pleasure for me to be with all of you. Thank you to participate to this very important webinar. And I want to do a reflection here about this issue. And I'm going to start with this. The first enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia in 1619, making the beginning of centuries of slavery in that would become the United States. During this period, the same period, Native Americans community faced displacement, violence, a genocide that led to a tremendous loss of life and land. It took nearly 150 years from the earliest colonies to the American Revolution for independence to be declared. And even then, the ideas of democracy, freedom, and equality were not extended to everyone. Those two visions of America, one rooted in exclusion and oppression, and the other in liberty and equal rights, have continued to shape the nation up to today. Now, we are faced this question: which vision do we choose moving forward? People from many different cultures, countries, and backgrounds have built the wealth and strength of this nation. Together, we have the power to shape what kind of society we want to be. And I want to read 2 sentences from our vision in Mass Union. It's a long one, but I want to do 2 ones that are very important. And our vision said a world without homelessness, racism, and classism, where housing is a human right. Thank you so much. And I will go.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, Dave, thanks.
Thank you very much. Very well said.